Hello everyone, I'm Alan Hasaler, General Manager for Armstrong, the Butler system, and today we're going to read some Christmas books. Today I'm going to read Merry Christmas, Curious George. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today George was visiting a Christmas tree farm. "You can help me pick out the perfect tree for our home," his friend told him. "Keep close to me while we look." George promised to be good, but little monkeys sometimes forget. The Christmas tree farm had more trees than George had ever seen. He found a very nice one right away, but then another caught his eye. George could not resist climbing up the tallest tree to get a better view. He looked for the man with the yellow hat, but his friend was nowhere in sight. Two men tromped into the clearing. "There's our tree," one man told the other. The men cut down the tree and loaded it onto the truck. Along with George. George held on tightly. He saw the man with the yellow hat as the truck drove away, but the truck was going too fast. George could not jump off. He was scared, but still a little curious. Soon the truck stopped in front of a hospital. George peeked out of the branches as the men carried his tree inside. The hospital was a busy place. George jumped out of the tree. There was lots here to see and do. He looked at some interesting pictures. He found a jacket and tried it on. He played on a trampoline. He even went for a ride on a speedy little cart. What fun! Then George spotted something very interesting, his tree. George knew that Christmas trees were supposed to have tinsel and twinkling lights and shining ornaments, but this tree was empty. George thought and thought, and then he had an idea. Next, George noticed a pile of gifts in the corner of the room. The gifts looked pretty, but George was curious. He could make them look even prettier. This red bow would look much better on the green box, and the name tags might look nicer on different packages too. A nurse arrived, and what did she see? A monkey, and he's making a big mess. A group of children crowded around the nurse. They were all patients at the hospital. Even though it was almost Christmas, the children were not smiling or looking happy. "Come along," the nurse said, picking George up. "I'd better get you out of here before you can ruin anything else." A girl with a cast stared at George's tree. Suddenly she giggled. "Look," she said, "it's my X-ray." My boy laughed, and there was the balloon from my room. All the children started chattering and laughing as they looked at George's funny decorations. "Can't he stay for the party?" a boy asked the nurse. "We don't mind about the gifts. It will be fun to sort them out. Please let him stay, please," the other children chimed in. When she saw how happy the children looked, the nurse looked happier too. "I suppose he can stay," she said, "if he promises to help fix the tree." George was happy to help. The children helped too. Some of them returned George's decorations, while others handed George the real ornaments. He scampered up and down, stringing lights and hanging tinsel. Being a monkey, he was good at that sort of thing. He was also good at making the children laugh. When the tree was finished, George helped open the gifts. He was having such a good time that he completely forgot he was lost. Until the man with the yellow hat hurried into the room. "There you are, George," he cried. "I followed that truck all the way here." George was very happy to be reunited with his friend. The nurse invited them both to stay for milk and cookies. Ho, ho, ho. Did someone mention milk and cookies? A man in a red suit walked into the room. His belly jiggling, he was holding a beautiful golden star. George's eyes widened. It was Santa Claus. "Who would like to put the star on top of the tree?" Santa asked. "George," the children cried at once. "Let George do it." George scurried up the tree one last time. He put the golden star in place carefully. Merry Christmas, Curious George. I would just like to thank all of our Armstrong viewers and guests a very merry and safe Christmas. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Leslie Osche, County Commissioner, and I'm here today to read you the story, The Littlest Christmas Tree by Janie Jason. Once upon a time, in a field of young Christmas tree seedlings, there stood a tiny tree, smaller than all of the other seedlings. The little tree stood attentively in her row, planted in the soft sandy soil among the other little trees. The littlest tree wanted to grow tall enough to become a real Christmas tree. As she was growing, the littlest tree decided to think about all the things that made her happy. The first thing she thought of was the sun. "I love the sunshine, so warm on my green branches," she said to herself. "I can feel it helping me grow tall all summer long." The littlest tree tipped her head and thought about some more. "And the sky, I love that too. I watch it each day as it changes. Some days all cloudy and gray, and some days so clear and blue." Then she felt a gentle breeze begin to rustle through her tiny green needles. "The wind! I can't forget the wind. When I hear the wind coming, I listen very carefully, and I scrunch myself down as low as I can to let it blow through me. I can feel it all the way from the most top branch to my very lowest branches." The littlest tree thought and thought about the many wonderful things in her world. "Of course there's the rain. How delicious it feels on my needles, so soft and warm, smelling sweetly of grass and earth. I know I'm lucky to have the rain, and the sun and the sky and the wind. They care for me and help me to grow tall. But I do wish I would grow faster." And the littlest tree waited and dreamed about becoming a Christmas tree. Sometimes the littlest tree leaned over to listen to the grown-up trees talking to each other in the nearby woods. She learned that when she grew taller, trimmers would come with their clippers to carefully shape her tree form. "I won't be afraid when the trimmers come," she told herself. "I know that I will be shaped to become a beautiful Christmas tree, with my very tip-top reaching high toward the heavens." Christmas trees must be a lot like people, thought the littlest tree. People who are good and strong look up to the heavens for strength and encouragement. I will look up and stand patiently until I am tall enough to be chosen for Christmas. She called out to the sky, "Please choose me. I am ready for Christmas celebration. I am ready for the season of lights and life." Ever so quietly, the littlest tree thought, "But what if I am not chosen to be a Christmas tree? There must be lots of things I can become when I am tall." She decided to think about some of the many possibilities for her life. Maybe I could be a shelter for animals to hide in my fluffy branches. Perhaps a rabbit or a squirrel would stop by for an overnight stay. Or I could be planted near a family's house, and little birds will nest in my soft needles. I know my friends, the chickadees, would love to stay with me for the winter. They could fly from my branches to the bird feeders and window ledges and then fly back to me for safety. The littlest tree was filled with ideas, jumping from branch to branch as she thought about the many things she could become. Maybe I could be a window frame and hold shiny glass in my arms. Oh, that would be lovely. There are so many possibilities to think about, the littlest tree said excitedly. Then pausing, she said, but today I can only grow and become the very best right here where I am planted. I will feel the sun and the sky and the wind and the rain, and I will think about how wonderful it is to grow just for today. The littlest tree often listened to the mother and father trees whispering with the other tall trees in the woods. They told stories of their ancestors, the giant old trees so tall and majestic that even the strongest of men looked up at them with wonder. Standing up as straight and tall as she could, the littlest tree stretched her tiny roots deep down into the soft, sandy soil. She looked up to the heavens and called out to her Creator, "Invite the birds and the animals and all the people to come and walk between our rows of seedlings. Let them see the beauty of the sky and the trees. Let them feel the magic of the sun and the wind and the rain, and let them know the wonder of the forest." At last, the littlest tree understood. The joy of being a Christmas tree can be found in each and every day. Standing patiently in her row of seedling trees, littlest Christmas tree looked up into the dark, starry night and whispered, "Thank you, dear Creator, for life. Thank you for dreams. Thank you for ideas and thoughts and feelings. Most of all, thank you for choosing me to grow just for today and to know the wonder of your world and its many possibilities." On behalf of the Butler County Commissioners, we wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm-lighted windows below to their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. "And they're hanging their stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming, "I must find a way to keep and stop Christmas from coming." For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise! That's one thing he hated, the noise. Then the Who's young and old would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing, 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 sing. And more the Grinch thought of the Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with this now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Oh, then he got an idea, the Grinch he did. The Grinch had a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed with his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick. With his coat and his hat, I look like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks. On a ramshackle sleigh, he hitched up good old Max. Then the Grinch said, giddy up, and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet, snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags with his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue. Where his little old Who stockings all hung in a row, these stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant. Round the whole room he took every single present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums. He stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox, and he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding, and he took the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was no more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie and he thought it up quick. Why, my little sweet tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on the tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log on the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. And on the walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to all the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for all the other Who's mouses. It was 1:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with the presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsels, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Hoo-hoo! To the Who's. he was grinchiously humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up, I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two, and then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I must simply hear. He paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And did he hear a sound rising over the snow? It started in low, and it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so. But it was very, very merry. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. For every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without presents, any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or another, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzle was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what? What happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say, that Grinch's small heart grew 3 times sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so right, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. He brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. Oh, the Grinch! He did have a heart after all, just like Santa and I do.
Hello, boys and girls. Merry Christmas. I came from the North Pole, and I brought my favorite book with me, The Night Before Christmas. Let's begin, shall we? 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled down for a long winter's nap. And there we can see the children dreaming about all the wonderful things that Christmas has to offer. When out in the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave luster to midday, to objects below. And there he is looking out the window. There's his little dog. We're all excited. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and he shouted, and he called them by name. There I am, flying over the village. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away all. as dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount in the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and me, St. Nicholas too. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. And look at all the toys that I brought one day. This is one Christmas Eve, and I remember it well. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses. His nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. And there he is. Picture of me without my glasses. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work. And he filled all the stockings and then turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all good night." Well, boys and girls, it was my pleasure to give you this book of mine, to read this to you, and I want you to know I'm looking forward to coming here to Butler Christmas Eve, and I guarantee we're going to have a great Christmas in spite of everything. I guarantee it. And remember, Santa loves you. Merry Christmas!